to do, which is that I have been saying that I would try Arkham Horror. And because it is Ralph's #1 game of all time, it is one of your top 3, I believe.
I think it was third.
It was in your top 3, but your top 3 is interchangeable at any point in time.
It could honestly be Ralph particularly Ralph and I have had so many good sessions of Arkham. If you asked me a day after one of those sessions, I'd say it was the greatest game I've ever played.
Perfect. So, well, so I had a chance to play the introductory campaign of Arkham Horror plus the side mission of the Hotel Excelsior.
Oh, nice.
So Ralph decided that he said in one of the weeks whilst you were away, look, let's not record, let's play Arkham Horror. And I said, you know what? Let's do it. I've been umming and ahhing and haven't done it in a while. And I'm like, if you know me, I'm not a huge thematic storyteller guy. I've tried Gloomhaven. I just cannot for the life of me get into Gloomhaven. There's something about the system that just me and just go butt heads
that's
with.
Fair. Yeah.
And the way that it was kind of described to me was I couldn't understand what I was about to get into or why I think I would enjoy the game. Anyway, so the way that Arkham Horror works is you need to, first and foremost, it's set in the Lovecraftian sort of investigator style, where you and the other players around the table will need to have created a character before you even set up into the game. Now, Ralph, he created me a librarian character. Daisy, I think her name was.
Yes, so Daisy's all about using...
She was in the investigator. So she's all about... And there are different ways that you can do things. You can... you have to find clues. Let me take a step back before I get to that, right? So my character's theme was I was not good at fighting, but I was very good at using my brain and my intellect to, outwit opponents and move around the game.
Yeah, and typically the goal of that character is to get all your tomes out, so your library books, basically.
Yeah, so she's got basically a bag. And so essentially the way that I kind of visualized her was she was a librarian, and she kind of also, through the amount of times the books that she's read, she kind of dabbles in witchcraft. And so she has some tomes and things, and I had some. My build was the build is 30 cards that represent your character's abilities, and each card you're allowed to have 2 of. So you technically have 15 skills, if you will, that work in different ways. That can change a little bit through the game, but essentially you have 2 cards of each skill, and away you go. So my librarian's theme was she had a little bit of psychic power, but she was really big into investigation and reading and through the tome. So my mind imagined her as basically a librarian who's been dabbling in witchcraft. So that was how I imagined her. Anyway, so the way that the game works is that you have a campaign. Now, the introductory campaign has 3 different stories, and you play through each of them. And then depending on what happens in each of these games, you have to make note of certain interactions that you did or didn't do. And depending on what happens, you then at the end of the adventure read out, a la like the adventure books, follow your adventure books where turn to page 3 and read this, blah, blah, blah. Arkham Horror does the exact same thing, but it'll ask you, did you kill this person? Or did you happen to do this?
Yeah, and it carries on beyond that. So one of the reasons why it does that, so there's the obvious one. If you die, you can die in the game.
And you can lose the game.
You can basically bail out on a mission.
Yep.
And there are legitimate reasons why. And there
do that.
I'm not going to spoil it, but there are certain scenarios where bailing out is actually the best thing to do.
Look, I will give a light spoiler warning. There may be some light spoil. I will try to avoid it, but for me to kind of explain why I really liked it, I'm going to try to not spoil it, but I will only be talking about the introductory sort of thing.
So I think we can safely talk about the introductory one because it hasn't changed, and we're not. And
I don't think it would change anyway.
It hasn't changed in years, and I think it's okay to talk about it a little bit.
Look,
but I will say that one of the other reasons why it's really important is because there are certain characters that you can only unlock through these missions.
Yeah,
and these characters are not main characters; they are characters that you slide into your deck as companions. Most decks can only have one companion out at a time. But
Ralph played a character who could have multiple companions.
Yes. And when we talk about Arkham, and I'll just say quickly, we're generalizing the rules here. There are characters that have wildly
and that break stuff.
Yeah, like for instance, I played my favorite character class are rogues. They are typically the green characters. And the character that I've been playing a lot recently, she has the ability to basically reuse items that would normally otherwise be disposed of.
Mm.
And it's wild when it pays off, because all of a sudden you just have these items that just never go away and you're just incredibly powerful. But I'm very much a glass cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, carry on. But I will say we're going to try our best to not spoil anything.
Yeah. So, but if you don't want to be spoiled anything about this, I apologize. I'll try and put a look at the chapters for when we talk about the unspoil. I'll make sure there's a chapter there, but I will try. Look, I'll give you the basic theme of what the first mission was, right? So the first campaign is basically we are in the lead investigator. So one of the two characters has to be the lead investigator, or sorry, you can have multiple people, but realistically, I don't think you'd be playing this game with more than 2, maybe 3 at maximum.
It's really good at 3, but I wouldn't play it at 4.
Yeah. So one person has to be the lead investigator, and essentially they have to be the person who makes most of the decisions at some point, right? In terms of story beats and things like that. The essential of the story, as far as I can remember it, was I was in my house. Then all of a sudden, I'm not in my house anymore. I'm in a trapped room, and all of a sudden there seems to be like demonic noises coming from somewhere in the house, and go, right? Now, the way that the game works is that in front of the players are a whole bunch of location cards, and these represent the different rooms and are kind of like where you can move your character. So it's not every room is connected to every other room, so there's a little system there. And then generally the game revolves around you have to find what they call clues. And those clues can be, they're just a token, but you may need to get, for example, 4 per investigator that you have. So we have to get 8 clues to advance the story. And if we don't advance the story fast enough, there is a timer of different things, of different maybe hunters or different enemies who are looking for us for reasons unknown, right? In this particular story.
In general, the timer is driven by Doom on particular cards. And every single card, or every single scenario will have normally 3 cards. Some scenarios that changes a little bit, but typically it's 3 cards, and depending on the number of players will depend on how much Doom that particular scenario will take before it flips and you progress the story. Typically speaking, or normally, progressing the story is bad. So go on.
So you either want to try and complete the mission before the story continues without you. And so we had a couple of key characters appear in our first mission, and one being a companion who I was able to get a hold of, and one being a kind of a mini boss, if you will, there's a certain mini boss. Now, I was not good at fighting, and Ralph was having a terrible time with his deck. We could not defeat this boss, but we were able to complete the mission. So we were able to actually complete the mission, but we didn't. This person, the character, had to stay in the mission. Damien knows who I'm talking about. I'm not spoiling it for this, but there was a specific character in the very first mission that didn't stay there. We were able to finish it. We left, and then all of a sudden we had to read out that it turns out that hey, this is the only light spoiler that I'm going to say. So I burnt down my house, right? And when I burnt down my house, the companion that I had was not happy with me doing that. And therefore we had to read out a specific paragraph that would lead into the next story beat, right? So we burned down my house, and that was the end of the first story. Now, in terms on night 1, we played over 2 nights. You get given XP based on the main objectives that you complete. So there are side objectives, like you go, hey, go here. If you can unlock this door and investigate this room, you may not get anything towards the main mission, but you may get a main experience point boost for whatever reason. You can then use those experience points to then update your deck. So Ralph whips out his binder, 2 binders, I should actually say, and we start looking through all the cards. And he goes, you've got 5 points. This is how you spend them. You can probably get 1 upgrade, maybe 2. Have a look for what seems cool. And so I was able to upgrade a couple of cards. Really cool. He says, all right, we've got 2 options. I go, okay. And he goes, we can either play the second story, the second mission of the campaign, or we can try out this side mission called the Hotel Excelsior. And I went, that sounds cool. Let's try that out. Now, it doesn't advance the story in any way, shape, or form. It is its own self-contained mission, but it does provide us XP that we can use towards the other mission. So if you've ever played any video games, it's essentially going on a side quest, doing some stuff that you go, I know the main story is over there, but I'm going to go do this thing anyway. level myself up, hopefully, and then come back a bit stronger.
Or even find additional companions and stuff.
Or weapons, we'll come into. So we played the Hotel Excelsior. Now, this one I'm definitely not going to spoil because this one was easily one of the coolest missions I played in the whole thing, right?
It really is.
It was a really cool thing where essentially the story, without going too much into it, is that there was a murder, and then essentially we're getting framed for the murder.
Yeah.
And then we then have to investigate this hotel and find out what the hell actually happened. And I would, without spoiling anything, my ending essentially was I was like the internet meme guys, like aliens. That was essentially what was going down in our story. But that's a lot of stuff. And then there's a lot of intrigue based on people that you do or didn't find, things that did or didn't happen. And that mission alone, now I know I'm really underselling what this mission was. It was very tense because we were running around rooms trying to avoid people who were looking for us. But there was a moment in that mission where we had 2 specific items that we found, which meant that, hey, we were going to have specific things. And I thought, given the items that we have, surely I need to check that room, which we haven't opened yet. That surely should be where the main boss of this thing should be, right? And Ralph was like, I don't know, maybe. And like he obviously kind of knew a little bit more than I did about the mission. But I went, there were 2 items, and I put something together, and I went, no, I'm going to move over there and check it. And sure enough, I open up that room, look in there, and all of a sudden it says, right, read this thing because we just found the boss and we need to do it. I'm like, holy crap. This was the first moment when I played this game when I'm like, this actually, the designers of these missions were thinking along the lines of, well, if you had this and this, where would this character be? Where would they be? And it actually made me go, it's not just a story, it is actually a little bit of a puzzle. You can get good at this by kind of putting together the actual clues of the game that they've presented to you. And you can actually, by knowing, for example, let's just like, not even a game type, but like, if you found a wood chisel, and maybe I'd go double check the lumber mill because it's there because, well, why not? Because maybe he works with wood, right? Something like that. That's a completely random example, but that whole idea, and that was that moment where I actually felt really smart. I'm like, oh shit, that actually worked. I can actually go check there. All right. And so I did, and I was like, okay. And we got out of there. I'm like, sweet, we have more XP to spend and blah, blah, blah. And then we called it a night. Great. Yeah. Had a lot of fun. So, really excited to go again.
So Arkham, for me, what really sold me on the game was the storytelling. It was the first time where I played a game where I'm reading the story and I said, like, if this was in a book, I would read it. Like I try to read a lot more than what I do. And anyway, like I love reading. But this was one of those games where even when we play, I say, no, I'm going to read it. Because I truly love the storytelling in it. But the other thing as well is that I'm also sort of like back in the day deck building buff, so Magic, Pokemon, stuff like that, and my son is also into it too. So we truly enjoy just like grabbing characters and just saying
crafting.
And just saying, all right, so if we wanted to do something crazy with this character, what would it look like? And I will say, like, the game is not perfect. So there is a site called Arkham DB, and you can go there and you can have a look at some of the decks that people have built. And there are some people that have gone out of their way to build what's known as infinite decks. So on your turn, you have a certain number of action points, and they are literally, so any action you take, whether it be
playing a card,
taking resources. Drawing a card, they're all actions. Cards cost resources to play.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that have designed decks that if you can get the right cards out, and some of these decks actually it's actually
easier said than done.
No. It's actually easier than what you'd think. They then become infinite action turns.
Right.
That's not in the spirit of the game. The game is supposed to be about a little bit of struggle while you're trying to make your way through.
Yeah.
That's where the value of the game is. That's where the storytelling happens. And even though, so Ralph, myself, and a friend of ours, we're currently working through the Path to Carcosa campaign. I think we're about 3/4 of the way through it. The storytelling in that campaign is many times better than the base box, and the base box is already really good.
Yeah, I will say as well. So the game we haven't actually mentioned for anyone who hasn't played the game is what's called a living card game, which basically means it's not like a trading card game, but they were releasing new booster packs or like character packs where it's like, hey, here's a new character and some new cards to go with certain powers and things.
That's the way they used to.
And that's how they used to do it, right? So that's how it came through. Now I will say what you said. So at the end of the Hotel Excelsior, I had a couple of cards and a weakness that happened due to our story. So then I had essentially a scar. Like I've been scarred from something that happened. But I also now had a new weapon that I never had access to and that I could bring into my next mission. So Ralph and I finished that night and we came back on the next week and we decided to play it again instead of recording. And I said, I want to finish this campaign. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to say this right now. It didn't go well.
It's really hard.
We got absolutely in the second mission. We could not, Ralph was not having a good time with his deck. He was not able to because my character couldn't kill anyone really, and so I was running around trying to get clues, and Ralph was having a rough time getting beaten up. So we had to leave that mission early, and then the final mission was essentially we had to go find the bad guys. We couldn't even find them before we lost the mission. Right?
Yeah.
So we absolutely got completely and utterly decimated in terms of the story, to the point where even in the storybook it says, look, you lose, right? But here's what happened and here's the thematic. Now I will say, I want to step back to what you said about the story. I'm not huge into Lovecraft sort of novels. I'm not huge into that whole supernatural mystique thing. I don't mind it, but it's never been my wheelhouse when it comes to story. But having played being a character in the story, I was kind of like, this is super freaking cool. So it is super cool what's going on, and I'm part of it. And I really did feel like I was affecting the storyline.
Yeah, like I'm not the biggest Lovecraftian fan, not because I think the genre is not interesting. I think the genre is really interesting. The problem I have with it is that the reason why so for any listeners out there, the reason why there are so many Lovecraftian board games out there is because the licensing is part of general public now.
Yeah, so you can just use whatever you want. You can
it's
use whatever.
Completely free. So, and most games will just say, okay, Lovecraftian, cool. What are we going to do? We're going to drop Cthulhu. We're going to drop Hastur. We're going to drop every single monster, and it's going to be a monster game. Let's go. That's not what Lovecraftian is. Lovecraftian does have monsters in it,
but it's more about the intrigue.
It's more about the intrigue, and it's more about it's more about the whole, am I going insane? Did that really happen? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? Are we going nuts? Like, where are we? It's more about dealing with sort of like insanity and such. It's less about the monsters, and
that is shown in
Arkham portrays that more, and I think because it leans into that more, the storytelling is better.
Yeah, and so you have another thing which we have skipped over, which is that you have two different sort of health points, if you will. You have physical health, and then you have insanity, which is basically
your mental health.
Your mental health, if you will, right? And basically, some like my character had basically four physical health, but I had 8 mental health, right? So I was mentally strong, but Ralph was the opposite, right? He wasn't very mentally strong, but physically strong. And so that the idea that if I was to actually be killed, or if I happened to have gone insane in that mission, I could get scars going into the next mission based on the fact that, so I'm not dead, but I got knocked out and now I have a scar based on that. So look, the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I want to thank Ralph for pushing me to continue to play this game. This is what I said to him. I said, this is probably the best game that I will never own, because as much as I respect it, I don't think I can play it solo. I'm just not that type of gamer.
Yeah.
However, having thought about it, I just don't know if it is my sort of game to own. However, if you ever said to me, we're playing a campaign, you want in,
look,
I would probably go, sure, I would love to play, but I don't know if I'd ever buy it. And it's a weird kind of, it's this weird, I feel bad about saying it because I really like the game, but I know if I bought it, I don't know if I'd ever get it off the shelf.
And that's fair, because so I had the opposite reaction. I played it, and I played it almost the exact same way. We played the intro scenario of the base campaign, and then we stopped for dinner. It was another friend of mine who showed me the game, and then he also set up Hotel Excelsior. and I had a miserable time in the hotel. Without giving it away, I was the guy that just got chased everywhere.
There are like 6 or 7 different endings in the hotel, by the
yeah.
way. So like if we give away something like Ralph literally said to me, I've never seen that ending
Yeah,
before. So
yeah.
he's played it like 3 or 4 times and got something new.
The following week, I sold a bunch of games and bought into Arkham. I had the opposite reaction because it was so different to anything I had played. However, my situation is different. If I put a deck builder or a game that requires deck construction in front of my son, we will play that game.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah. There's not something that I would do with Georgie. Georgie is not really wouldn't do that.
And that's
my
the difference.
wife.
And then following up with that, Ralph and I have caught up a bunch of times and played over the last couple of years. We've caught up with another friend of ours, and it's gotten to the point that as much as we like Frosthaven, we've all kind of said like if we had a choice between Frosthaven and Arkham, we'd play Arkham.
Look, and that's I want to say as well, I respect this game for what it is. I look at it now and I go, I get it. I get why you two love it. Because I really enjoyed it. I just know I just know that I don't think I'll get what out of it. Now, our friend Hamish, he's also bought it now because you introduced it to him. He had the same thing. He's like, I've got to buy that game because I want to play it. So I can see it. And I would actually always be down for a game. I don't know how I'd go in terms of the theory crafting side, but whatever. I want to say, however, what it has done is it actually has piqued my interest, though, in the thematic deck building sort of game to the point